On August 17th, a discovery on Hacker News turned global attention toward obscure release notes buried in Anthropic's developer documentation. That page is a dated, diffable public changelog tracking the exact system prompts running right now on Claude's consumer interfaces. It details the active instructions for 5 current models, ranging from the current flagship, Claude Fable 5, down to Claude Sonnet 4.6. This is a longitudinal corpus of stated behavioral policy. It is an intentional publication by Anthropic, not a leak. The text reveals explicit internal rules for user well-being, including mandates that the model must not suggest specific methods or offer encouragement for self-harm. It also mandates political even-handedness. If a user asks Claude to argue a specific political or policy position, the prompt forces the model to deliver the best case its defenders would make, rather than presenting it as Claude's own view. But the most operational line on the page separates those rules from developers. These system prompt updates do not apply to the Claude API. The tone rules, the well-being limits, and the political framing shape the web interface and mobile apps exclusively. If your API integration feels blunter or less careful than the consumer app, it is because this explicit prompt scaffolding is missing. To match that behavior, builders have to manually reconstruct these rules in their own prompt layer. The prompt text also reveals a specific historical anomaly, a mandatory 19-day suspension of the models themselves. The changelog states that Anthropic suspended access to its top models on June 12, 2026, to comply with Department of Commerce export controls. The controls were lifted on June 30th, and access was restored on July 1st. The text explicitly injects these dates into every new chat. We have to ask why a frontier model needs to be actively reminded of a mid-2026 server suspension. This chart compares training cutoffs. Fable 5 abruptly stops at January 2026, while Opus 5 extends through May. The flagship misses 4 months of history. The June 12th export control falls completely outside its training data. The model cannot remember it. Anthropic uses the system prompt as a forced data injection layer, pushing missing reality into the model's active memory. The prompt serves as active infrastructure, used to patch the architectural reality of static training weights. Beyond system patching, this documentation offers unusually clean data for researchers studying AI behavior. Starting with the Claude 4.6 generation, Anthropic implemented a strict single fixed snapshot policy for each model ID. Because the model weights are pinned, any shift in how Claude behaves on the consumer site after a specific date is directly attributable to a change in the published prompt text. Standard behavioral studies of deployed AI almost entirely lack this precise experimental control. For builders and researchers alike, the document contains a secondary warning regarding the model's self-awareness. The text instructs the model to explicitly disclaim its own product knowledge, stating it has no documentation access and details may have changed. The instructions force Claude to route all inquiries about pricing and usage limits blindly to Anthropic support documentation. Because of these injected rules, the deployed model is architecturally designed to be an unreliable narrator of its own corporate surface. We previously covered the stated policy that Fable 5 and Mythos 5 share the exact same underlying weights, divided only by safety guardrails. This flowchart models how Fable 5 routes user queries. Some queries silently hit a conditional logic gate, triggering a safeguard that swaps the flagship for Claude Opus 5. This swap is triggered exclusively by 3 topics: biology, cybersecurity, and LLM research. Anthropic states these safeguards are tuned conservatively, occasionally catching harmless requests, but triggering in less than 5% of sessions on average. This officially documents the precise cause for user support tickets, complaining that the model's capabilities suddenly changed mid-conversation. Treating this documentation as a flawless victory for corporate transparency misreads the available data. Navigating these hidden infrastructure realities is exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe to get this technical analysis the day an update actually lands. The first caveat is temporal. Nothing actually shipped today. The massive Hacker News attention spike occurred on August 17th, but the latest entry in the actual documentation is dated July 24th. This viral moment is a delayed discovery of a standing changelog. It is an attention event rather than a release event. The second caveat is structural. There is a complete lack of external verification. The page offers no cryptographic hash, no endpoint, and no mathematical way to prove this published text matches the live deployment byte for byte. The current state of this documentation is simply Anthropic narrating Anthropic, operating entirely on corporate trust rather than auditable systems. The final caveat surrounds the load-bearing safety metric justifying the Opus 5 routing. The 5% number is entirely soft. The phrase "on average" obscures the true impact by flattening the data across the entire user base. For the specific security-focused users opting to pay for the flagship Fable 5, their topical trigger rate is likely vastly higher than that published average. The necessary next step for the industry is an independent adversarial extraction of the live prompt to test against this documentation. A future documentation entry lowering that 5% routing rate is the checkable follow-through Anthropic now owes the community. Until an independent extraction matches this published text, this page remains suspended between true transparency infrastructure and a smartly formatted press release.